Welcome back, everyone. In this video, our goals are to show where to access the Foliage Select tool, explain what the Foliage Select tool does. We're going to discuss and demonstrate how to select and deselect foliage instances. Then we're going to discuss and demo select foliage instance actions, and we're going to explain the differences between using this tool and using placement mode to move around foliage in your landscape. So this Foliage Select tool, it can be found here in your foliage mode, and it is not the first tab, not the second tab, but the third tab down. So go ahead and select that guy. Now, in preparation for this video, I did place some foliage out here in my landscape. I have some grass, just a few rocks, and a few trees. Now, what this tool allows us to do, it allows us to select individual instances of our foliage down here, so that we can move them, that we can scale them, delete them, etc. Now, we need to do something first before we can actually use this tool. With this tab selected, we've got a few different action buttons that we can try to use right here. If I select all, I don't actually select any of my individual instances here. And the reason for that is because currently we're showing that all of our foliage types have a count of 0 in our landscape. Well, that's not exactly true, because we don't exactly have 0 of our bush, grass, etc. in our landscape. This count is not showing the count per your landscape. It is showing the count of these instances on any of your given levels. So we need to come down to our levels tab down here. And currently, our persistent level is our current level. That is what we have as our persistent level. But we did not actually apply these mesh instances, these foliage types, to our persistent level. They live here on one of these sub-levels. Which one? Well, if we come into World Composition, this tab right here, you can see that I painted my path, this material back here, on this given landscape tile, landscape X0, Y of -1. So I'm going to come back to my levels tab, and here's X0, Y of -1. If I right click on that and make it current, we can now see that in our listing of foliage types, we have more than 9,000 grass, 3 rock, and 3 trees that exist on this sub-level. So it's important to note here that when we were adding some foliage to our landscape, we were adding it directly not to our persistent level, but to our landscape level tiles themselves. It automatically associated those foliage types to any of these individual tiles that they were placed upon. Okay, so now that we have a count down here and it shows that we actually have this selected as our current level, we can work with our select tool. So how do we go about selecting foliage instances? Well, there's a few different ways here. Way number one is to simply select a given foliage type. So I've selected my rock here. You can see I can move it left and right, up and down, etc. I can select my tree. Sure. I can even select an individual clump of grass. So that's how you can select just one at a time. Now, obviously, if you want to select multiples, you could hold down the control key and click around, and that way you could move around a few different instances at once. However, if you wanted to select all, you could simply click this Select All button up here. When I click on that, you can see that it highlights everything. Everything's got a yellow outline around it. The rock, the trees, the grass, everything. So it's important to note that with this Select All button, selects all foliage instances, we don't have to have these checkboxes checked here like we normally do when we are applying or painting or reapplying these foliage types. The Select All doesn't care if you have these checked or not. It will select them all. So obviously, if you want to deselect them all, you can simply select this Deselect All box, like so. This Select Invalid is a little bit hard to just talk about, so I'm going to move this rock temporarily off of my landscape tiles. I'm just going to have it float off here in the distance, and then I'm going to click off of it. Now, Select Invalid, when I click on this, you will see that it is highlighted. It's got this yellow outline around my rock. Select invalid basically highlights anything that is not on a given level. It's just floating out here in space, so that is considered invalid. Next, let's talk about all the different things that we can do once we have a given foliage mesh selected here. Well, I've got my rock here selected, and as you saw me do before, you can move it in any of the 3 major directions: left, right, up, or down. You can also tap the spacebar and rotate this in any direction. You can hit the spacebar once again, and you can scale it in any direction. And if you hold down the Alt key, highlight any of these given arrows, left click and drag, you can drag out copies of this. Now, with one of these up in the air, you can also press the End key. That is the END key found next to the delete key. That will snap it on down to the floor. Now, there is a little bit of a caveat here when you do this, and I'm going to do it again with this one. You saw how it auto-rotated it down when it snapped down to the ground. It's trying to make itself flat or flush with the given surface. So that's one thing to know about. The next thing to know about is this trick, pressing the End key to snap it on down to the floor, will only work if you try that when we are trying to place it within the tile it was originally placed in. If I was to, say, move this way over here into the adjacent level tile and press the End key, that trick will not work. So that End key trick only works if you're trying to place it within the same level that you originally had it placed in. Now, I'm also going to show you another trick here with a few of these grass instances here. I'm just going to select one, hold down Control, and select a few others like so. And I'm going to drag these above this sloped hill here like so. And if I was to press the End key at this point, you can see how it automatically rotates it so that that grass is placed flush with the contours of our hill. That is pretty cool. Last thing I wanted to show off in our list of select actions here is this move to current. And this button is going to do what it says it does. It's going to move the selected foliage instance to our current level. Now currently, our current level is this one down in our levels tab in blue, our X0, Y, -1. Let's say I want to make this rock be associated with this sub-level out here. This is the X0, Y, -2. All I would need to do is double click on that guy to turn it blue. Alternatively, I can right click and make it current like that. And now that that is the current level and I have this rock selected, I can say move to current level. And notice what happens to my rock count down here. I now have 1 in here because this guy is technically associated with that sub-level over there. All right? Now, I want to show you some of the differences here between our select mode right here in our foliage tools with the placement mode. Because when we are in place mode, you're still able to select your foliage, albeit if I click on this grassy clump right here, I don't select an individual instance, I'm selecting the whole shebang. And this is currently known as Instance Foliage Actor. It's selecting all of this foliage that is associated with this sublevel, this X0, Y, -1 sublevel. You can see it did not select this rock over here because that is technically a different Instance Foliage Actor actor. So if I select this group of foliage right here, you can see I can't individually select any of these individual pieces of foliage. And if I was to try to scale it, let's go, I don't know, 4 in the Y and 4 in the X and the Z. You're just like, where did it go? It went somewhere out yonder, way out there. So all kinds of awkwardness happens when you try to modify, move, whatever, your static mesh foliage instances that you have placed in your landscape. Now, that's not the way you want to work. Anytime you're looking to move your foliage instances, you want to go into foliage edit mode. Don't come into place mode and then select your foliage and try to move it from there. It will be a nightmare. All right, guys, that is going to do it all for this one. We will see you in the next one.